grateful that you're dry. Dry is good. It's a great time to be together, to worship, to sing, to hear God's word preached. And so welcome. Let's say a quick prayer, then we'll get started with our service. Excuse me. Father God, thank you for just this morning. Father, thank you for the ability for us to be here. Thank you that you're with us wherever we go, and just really pray that you can have an incredibly encouraging service. In Son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right, let's all stand and sing. Glory, glory, hallelujah, since I laid my burden down. Glory, glory, hallelujah, since I laid my burden down. I'm so better, so much better, since I laid my burden down. Way on down, I'm all better, so much better, since I laid my burden down. Friends don't treat me like they used to, since I laid my burden down. Way on down. Friends don't treat me like they used to, since I laid my burden down. Going home to be with Jesus, since I laid my burden down. Way on down. Going home to be with Jesus, since I laid my burden down. Glory, glory, hallelujah, since I laid my burden down. Way on down. Glory, glory, hallelujah, since I laid my burden down. Since I laid my burden down, 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 since I laid By and by, oh
Josh. Hi, I'm Ryan. I am a former student at Clemson and just sticking around in the area, just like, you know, a good portion of our church. But this summer I got married. So that's good. That's good, but honestly, it's been really tough. I think I'm learning. Calm down. I've heard marriage is kind of a spiritual discipline. It's not something that you have to do, but it's something that will build you as a faithful disciple. And that's true. I've really come out to learn a lot about myself, and I think recently I've learned that I've been selfish and unwilling to give things up. And I'm not talking about like doing the dishes or cleaning up and picking up. I mean like big things, these long-term commitments, these life goals. You come into marriage with these expectations that you don't even realize you have, and then you suddenly have someone else with different expectations and you have to work through them. I don't want to take risks, certainly in my marriage. I want to be able to settle into it. I don't want to introduce more variables into my equation than I have. Sorry, I'm an engineer. You got it. Anyway, but with that, this week I've learned that sometimes you do things you don't want to do for people you love, and that's a part of marriage. And I don't think Jesus wanted to die on the cross. I don't think God wanted to give his son. The truth is that's what happened. So when I started thinking about this communion, I was going to talk about how I haven't had faith through some tough discussions, how I'm trying to have the faith that these situations will work out and we'll work through them, but the truth is that's not really a correct view of faith. See, Jesus didn't die for you to have more free time. He didn't die for you to get your bills and loans paid and for it to be less burdensome in the future. Jesus didn't die for you to get an education, to do well in your classes, to get a job. Jesus didn't die for you to be happy. And so if we have our faith in these things, if our faith says that they will change and get better, that's not the kind of faith the Bible speaks of. And there's a word for it. It's called optimism, not faith. And so Jesus died ultimately for you to go to heaven, and he died to glorify God. And therefore, we need to have faith. I lost my place. Sorry. He died for you to have faith that what you want isn't what you need. And that what you think you need isn't what you need, but that he is what you need. And so if having faith is intrinsically coupled with life getting better, then you're wrong. You've missed the point because that's still a faith based on your life. And I think it's a sneaky deception. I don't think it's something you kind of like explicitly go about saying, but I think it's there. I think we tend to talk about faith more when things are bad and not so much when things are good. We say things like have faith that things will work out, have faith that it'll be okay, have faith that God will take care of it, and they all sound very Christian, but I don't have heaven pictured in my mind when I say these things. I have some point down the road where things are going to be easier. And it's just the hope that things will come out the way we want them to. It's not faith. And so instead of being faithful that the worries of this life will work out or get better, we need to be faithful that the worries of this life don't matter. It's not to say that God doesn't care about your life. It's not that we don't go to God in tough situations, but our faith in God is for comfort, support, and assurance, not as a fix to a difficult situation. We're to put our hope in him, not what he can fix. So it doesn't matter how well I do at my job, how much money I have, how much time I have to sit down and relax. Even noble things like my marriage and my relationship, enjoying blessings that I've been given, they're of this life and they will die. I tend to words these things without deliberateness, but they're all temporary. The flowers, or the grass withers and the flowers fade, and ultimately that's our life and everything in it. But what matters is how I use my temporary life with my temporary situations to bring glory to God. What matters is how I work through the worries of this life as a disciple faithfully. And so I'm not trying to give some nihilist, downtrodden look of life, everything's meaningless, but what I'm saying is that things don't have this intrinsic meaning. Things have meaning because of God, and really God is the only thing that has meaning. We're here to groan inwardly for heaven, not for some later time on earth. And ultimately, we're still on earth so that we can bring others with us, not to work your job or have a good time. And I haven't had this attitude. Honestly, I'm still struggling to be there. But I've had my hope in a better future, not a better future in heaven. I've had my faith that things will get better and situations will pass, not that situations don't matter when you're dead or pale in comparison to your relationship with God. And if you're a disciple, then you are dead. You've died in baptism, and you can't live in these things any longer. So going back to the beginning, I think it's a lot easier to sacrifice things when you have your hope in the right place. It took fighting with Juliana to kind of realize these blemishes. It took some fights and some hard times to kind of realize these blemishes were in my life, in my faith. Now, when you read the Old Testament, there's a lot about discipline. God sends his people out of Israel and into Babylon. And I read it and I kind of see it as like a punishment. Like God's tired of looking at them and just doesn't want to deal with them anymore. But I've been reading Amos, and in Amos 4, he talks about how I've given you these difficult times again and again to help you repent. He says, I made you starving, I made you insecure, I tore down your walls, basically, so that you would come back to me. And ultimately, they get sent to Babylon because they didn't. Now, admittedly, James makes it a little more succinct, so I'm going to read from there. But I'm going to read from James 1, and it's really talking about the same thing. I found that a lot of the things I'm reading in the New Testament, I've been reading the Old Testament, they're just coming out of different places, like the Old Testament reworded. But I'm going to read James 1, 2 through 4, and then verse 12. It says, consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. Perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. Blessed is the man who perseveres under trial, because when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who love him. So as we take communion, I want us to really think about your life. Honestly, what trials are you going through? What do you feel like you're struggling with? What's weighing you down? And with that, think about how you've responded to it. Have you responded to it faithfully? And not the faith that things will get better, whether it works out the way you want it to or not, but the faith that God is your salvation, the faith that no matter what, Jesus is Lord. So, I'm going to pray and we'll take it. God, thank you for this time. Thank you for giving us this chance to meet together on Sunday and just be together as a family. God, thank you for your forgiveness and your grace and for helping us through tough times, even though I know they don't matter. God, thank you for really being that father figure in our lives. Please help us this week to really go about our life with the right frame of reference, the right point of view, and God, keep in mind that you're what matters.
Yeah.
Amen.
All right, guys, let's pray for the offering. Lord, thank you so much just for giving us this chance to come together. And like Rich was saying, we get to hear from your word, we get to sing together, we get to praise you. It's just such a special time in our weeks. I'm really grateful for the chance we have to hear each other's hearts too, just to hear Josh sharing about things that he's learning that I know I was super convicted about some of his mindsets. And I just thank you for that, God, that you don't just convict us from your word, but you convict other people and then they can share those things and really help us just to learn about your character and your word and have the right perspectives on this life. But when it comes to perspectives, I know with money, we can be worried about a million things, with student loans, kids, just feeding ourselves. But I pray that we are giving back to you with all that we've been given. We've been given so much, and I just pray that out of our gratitude, we are really giving you our first fruits, and that you'll bless that, God, that we can just continue to do your work here in Clemson and in the world. But we love you. Thank you again for this time together, and we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, just a few announcements for you guys. So cross-training tonight for all the campus students. It's back at the Winship's house this week. So that'll be 8 p.m. at the Winship's house, cross-training. Midweeks are congregational for the fall, so we'll be here at the Madron, 7 p.m. on Wednesday night for church. And campus, we'll have family night like normal, our house, 6 p.m. on Friday. Oh wait, no, sorry, apple picking this week. And then we're back to normal next week. So, anyway, apple picking is on Saturday, and we're meeting at... Yeah, apple picking time. So yeah, we'll send out an announcement. If you're a college student and you're not on any of our messages, just see Jessica or Anne Claire or myself if we can get you in the loop. Also, good job on the tailgate. So shout out to Emily and Patrick and everybody else who got everything set up yesterday. That was awesome. I know y'all had to kind of call an audible at the last second and redo it all, so good work. But we're going to keep going with our service. If you want to stand up.
Josh, great job on the communion, man. Wherever he left, he's gone. Out of here, it's okay. He is signing autographs out of the floor. But let's start out with a prayer. Father, thank you as we have prayed this morning. We are grateful that we get these little bits of time throughout the week, God. It's really just a couple times a week that we can come together and sing to you, come together and fellowship with one another, regardless of really what our family group is or our ministry, whether we're on campus or adults ministry or whatever it is, God, that you let us have these bits of time, God. Thank you so much for that. I pray that you will help us to cherish those times, God. And we're so grateful for your grace and your mercy. I pray, God, that you will help us to hear your gospel more clearly every day. But God, also will teach us, Lord, please teach us to communicate your gospel clearly. And it just seems like we're living in a time where everything is so heightened, like there's emotions and anger and everything is so heightened, Father. And sometimes Christianity falls into that, where people are just fighting about things. Father, I pray that we can communicate with grace and mercy and truth, Father, the way you did. Help us to not depend on our opinions. Help us to not depend on our talent, Father, but that we will just embody what you have lived, what you're calling us to be, and that your gospel will be deep within our hearts, God. We love you. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. So as we get started today, one of the things, please keep this in mind, is that as we're going through what we've called the core four, okay? I mean, that's a totally obviously made-up name for something, right? I mean, you won't find that in your Bible. But there are 4 principles that we want to embody here. But I would also say this, that these are 4 principles that are non-negotiable in any way, shape, or form wherever you want to follow Jesus. All right, this isn't just kind of a flavor. These are principles that are so deeply entrenched in God's Word. And so why I'm bringing this up now is everything we talk about today or next Sunday, that we've progressed through this, and it really goes without saying that our first and foremost, if we hear anything, and we aren't hearing it through the kind of the microphone or the filter of the gospel of Jesus, then everything we hear after that is going to become very, very difficult, okay? This isn't segmented. It isn't one of those things where you're going, okay, there are times it's good news, and then there are times it's not good news, okay? We've got to hear it through this lens, through this filter of what this really is good news, and not just in our minds, but deeply in our hearts. That goes to what Josh was talking about really as well, was the idea, no matter the circumstances, the gospel is the greatest news ever. And that doesn't mean that it makes us happy in bad times, but we have true hope. We're able to not flip out. We're able to not, go just, man, nothing's going to work out because we know through the gospel that's not the case. We talked about our second little portion of this 4 principles was discipleship, was the gospel asks us to come and follow Jesus without condition. Okay, it's really important that we know that it's not the condition, God, when everything is great, then I'll follow you. It's Jesus, you are so great, I will follow you regardless of anything I get, regardless of anything you give me, regardless of any hardship you help me overcome. Unconditional discipleship. The gospel calls us to that and says, Jesus is saying, no, come and follow me because my gospel is so great. It transcends circumstance. Okay? And then we've talked recently more in depth about that discipleship doesn't call us into an individualistic discipleship. It's not just me trying to be the best I can be and carry everything on my own. It's called us into the gospel, and Jesus have called us into a community. All right? And it's a small community of believers. It's the power, really, of what we consider today the local church, right? That's the power of it, because really when you talk about, Christianity all over the world, that's a really amazing thing to think about. Except disciples in Sri Lanka and the Middle East and Africa and South America and all that kind of stuff. That's absolutely incredible, except because of distance and because of culture, because we don't see one another on a regular basis, sometimes it's easier even to love people who aren't around us all the time. There's a refining when we're stuck with all of us knuckleheads, all right? And you go, but you know what? I have some people down in Florida, and they're always awesome. No, they're not. They just are because they're not around me all the time. Right? Once you get around me long enough, you're like, that dude's a knucklehead. Now you got to really start depending on Jesus. Right? I mean, there's something about the local community, and then that's really our third principle. And the fourth one is being a passionate disciple maker. And that can't be done individualistically either. There's a method behind the madness of God when it comes to community. Is this craziness of, I'm going to put a bunch of people together that really don't have much in common, that quite frankly should not like each other, and they're going to miraculously love each other, and the rest of the world is going to go, what the heck? How can an engineer who is viewing his marriage through numerical value, you know, and it's awesome, love, you know, artsy, you know, just totally, you know, like, yeah, Riley, right? Yes. But this is not like that. And you go, hold up a minute, man. How y'all view the world so differently. And that's the point of being a passionate disciple maker. Is that if I just hear what we're talking about now, about being a disciple maker, but I leave all the rest behind, the gospel and discipleship and community. You know what disciple making becomes? A weird endeavor. It becomes weirdness. Okay? Because it's just you trying to be the entirety of Jesus to somebody. And unfortunately, you won't know what me and you can't do that. It's just the truth. I mean, you know, but Keith, you can do all things through him, but you can't be him. Okay? You can't. And he didn't make it that way. He made it so a community would look like him. And that's amazing. And again, I think, for me, what I always love about this, I always like this idea that Jesus literally took what we would say maybe in the business world or in the sports world or some of that. He took what should work as a plan and said, I'm doing the complete opposite of that. I'm going to show the world how his kingdom is, okay? Which it just doesn't make sense all the time. I know in the business world, we should all like try to do different things. He's like, no, I'm going to take unschooled guys. Some of them don't like each other. They're going to build a church of people that really don't like each other, and they're all going to love one another, and it's going to be because of Jesus. Okay, so we're talking about something today, and we're getting into this being a passionate disciple maker, okay? Right. Okay. And I listen, here's the interesting thing about navigating these waters. Oftentimes, this doesn't get talked about. Because, man, we are walking the fine line of, man, what if this offends me? What if I don't want to hear this? I don't want to ask that question, does Jesus love the lost? Because it might take me somewhere I'm not willing to go. I think in our minds, we would all say, absolutely. I hope so. That would be great. I think he does. Okay? Who's lost? That's the next question I want you to ask yourself. Who is lost? All right? Because there's not a possibility that me and you will do what Jesus has asked us to do, what he died for. If all there is this fog of uncertainty, right? Of this idea of, okay, yeah, Jesus did come and he loves the lost. And I want you to think about this. Who is lost? And I want you to really take a snapshot in your mind, like, who are you picturing? In most cases, this question being asked on a Sunday morning in a church, right? We're thinking of, any span of people who aren't us. Because we're not that, right? I mean, that's where Christianity comes in and goes, well, I'm not, why does that matter? Except here's what I would kind of lay in front of you, okay, is there may not be a richer mission field in America than inside our churches on Sunday mornings. I know it's just super easy to think, no, but I come in every week. I sit down, I open my Bible during the week. I'm a good person. All right? And that's why this gets very uncomfortable sometimes. But I'm really going to ask us to kind of enter into that world of a little bit maybe being uncomfortable. And here's where I'm coming from. I was the guy, okay, that sat in church every Sunday for 23 years. And I would think that most people that knew me growing up would say, hey, he's a pretty good kid. Give him too much trouble. I wasn't too much trouble in my family. You know, I wasn't super rebellious. I found ways to like sneakily be rebellious, right? Because I had an older brother that couldn't figure out how to do it sneakily. You know, and he taught me the ways to navigate the sneakiness. But the truth of the matter is I go to church and I think if you probably ranked me as a 21-year-old kid in the world of 21-year-olds, I'd probably be in the upper 30% of just good guys. All right? Carl's going, no way. You're not even that now. You think awfully highly of yourself, Keith, okay? Maybe top 40%, okay? But the truth of the matter is I was like, man, I would never ask myself this question. I would never, ever kind of dig into this, except I had something in common with almost all of my friends that were sitting around me at church, was we were all kind of in the same boat, where we would sit down in a church, but we had neglected so much of what Jesus had called us to be, right? It's essentially gospel light. That's what has happened today in our world. And again, I hope this isn't one of those things where you're like, he is so judgmental. I would just ask you to go back and look at the fruit of what's coming from American Christianity. That's all I'll ask you to look at. You go, well, Keith, people aren't going to be perfect. Jesus didn't ask people to be perfect. Okay? The point isn't that you're perfect, but when you're following Jesus, there will be a difference made in your community. Okay? There won't be, hypocrisy won't be the norm. All right? It just won't be. A lack of love won't be the norm. All right? But there really has been this is a rich mission field, is all of, really, what I would say is our churches everywhere. However many are here in Clemson, however many are in South Carolina, however many, you know, and I know that that's just super uncomfortable, and I would have a hard time saying that if I wasn't one of those people. I sat in those shoes, and I know a lot of people that sat in those same exact shoes. And so I'm asking you to explore that not just in your life, but in the people's lives that God has put you in. Because he has put you in a circle of people that he wants the gospel to be spread. So we've got to have the good news. Gospel light is just attendance, being a member, right, with no discipleship. Okay? What I oftentimes call conversion theology, which is if I had a conversion experience, nothing else after that is required. Okay? I want you to think about that. This might be the most common gospel that's preached in our world today, which is don't ever, ever, ever share the gospel with somebody that's had a conversion experience. Because it's rude, insensitive, judgmental, right? It's all those things. I mean, that's really the rule we apply to ourselves, is don't ever share the gospel with somebody that's had a conversion experience. Except I want to ask you something. Can you think of a place as Jesus was going out in his ministry? Was there ever a time that he was like, just like, all I want you to do is to agree to follow me, but if you don't, that's okay? Would you get that from reading your New Testament? Would you get that from reading Paul's letters? Right? Any of the other letters, Peter's, John's, would that come through where they were going, oh, listen, don't proclaim the gospel to this group. They've already had a conversion experience, okay? We've got to, but the gospel, here's the deal is if we want to not be judgmental, that means we share the gospel with everybody. Yeah. Irregardless of what your experience in church has been. We share the gospel with everyone, okay? And I guarantee you there are people in our circle of lives that they're thinking in their heads, man, I've been going to church my whole life, and there's no power, and I'm bored, and I hear everybody talking about how it's supposed to be the way and the truth and the life, and it's supposed to be so amazing, and it just isn't to me. It's because oftentimes what's been taught to them has been this idea of you don't really have to follow Jesus. This is why we proclaim the gospel. The gospel light is no obedience. Right? Obedience just becomes like, you know, we can put a line through it and say, no, any obedience is strictly legalism. Okay? And that's been struck. This word has been struck from our model of discipleship. Is this idea of, no, you don't have to obey. This is why the mission field is so rich in our churches. Because the vast majority, in fact, there's been a huge study done by one of the groups that is very involved with Lifeway bookstores. They've done this huge multi-year study on what are the core beliefs of those claiming to be Christians in the world today. And 85% of people attending church on a regular basis agree that obedience is not required.
Oh. Wow.
That Jesus isn't worried about it in your life. And I'm just saying is, I've read the Bible through it a lot. I've never heard that in the Bible. Ever. Okay? Obedience is not legalism. Gospel light is no lordship. Okay? It's the idea of, Jesus, I'm going to surrender to you, except I'm going to make all the decisions for the rest of my life on my own. Based on what I want and how I want it. As Josh said, whatever's going to make me happy. That's how I'm going to decide things, okay? That means Jesus isn't Lord. Yeah. That's what that means, okay? And we've got to help ourselves, okay? And here's the deal is, if you're sitting there going, no, Keith, I've got all this on straight, okay? I'm saying, hey, measure your health, okay? Because this could have snuck in and you're going, oh, man, you know what? I'm sitting here going, no, I follow Jesus. I'm totally so, and then you go, hold on a minute. I make every decision based on what I want, how I want it, when I want it, what's going to make my life better. That means Jesus isn't Lord. That doesn't mean, oh my gosh, now I'm lost. And then that's not what I'm saying. But you gotta go, hold on, I may need to repent. I may have been washed of my sins. I may have been following Jesus, and I veered way off, and now I've got to repent of that. Okay? But gospel light is no lordship, and it's okay. Okay? To not have Jesus Lord. It's prosperity. It's what Josh talked about, is this idea of Christianity is about me getting good things in my life. Like no hardship. Okay. But it's interesting. What if Jesus did come up to you? What if he came up to you and said, listen, here's what I've appointed you for in this life. I've appointed you to make an ungodly amount of money in your life. I've appointed you to live in a neighborhood that you could never imagine the beauty and splendor of the homes. I've appointed you to be able to afford everything without even balancing a checkbook. That's what I've appointed you for. How many of y'all go, yes! That's what I'm talking about. Christianity right there. Jesus is Lord. I'm never missing church, man. I'm being around the church all the time. Thank you, Jesus. Right? But what if he said, I've appointed you to suffer? That's what I've appointed you for. I've appointed you to be average. I've appointed you to be in that place where you always are going to feel like you wish you had more money and you never have enough money. I've appointed you to be in a place that is going to be full of hardship. And if Jesus said, I appointed you to that place because that's where I need my gospel preached. You know, certainly we wouldn't be like all jumping up and down for that one, right? I mean, and the point isn't. The point isn't be like, oh, I'm just not sold out if I'm not happy about that one, okay? Like, yes, thank you, I'm so glad. You know, but it's that idea of keeping in mind prosperity and Christianity and discipleship, following Jesus. The two don't go hand in hand. Okay? It's that Jesus is putting us in a place, we're in a place to proclaim his gospel. And sometimes that's full of hardship. Sometimes that's full of joy and happiness and everything's going your way and all that kind of stuff. But we've got to kind of get rid of our prosperity theology. Okay? That's gospel light, right? Convenience. Like, I'll follow Jesus as long as I don't have to get up early, as long as I don't have to miss any meals, as long as I don't have to have... I want plenty of time to do fun stuff. I want to be able to have, 9 hours of sleep every night. I want to be able to to never have to wake up before 8. I want to never have to stay up studying past 11. I want, like, I'll follow Jesus. Like, when it is convenient, when, hey man, it's raining. I don't like going out in the rain. Man, I'd rather just stay in bed. Because there's a convenience theology. And again, I'm just putting this in front of you. Does Jesus love the lost? Yeah, absolutely. Who's lost? I want you to start thinking through this. And this, you may go, oh gosh, Keith, you are describing me, okay? I'm going to say, listen, I'm not describing anything about you. I'm saying get in the Word, and we will see that this is just gospel life. This is like making us feel like we're putting a Band-Aid on something. And in the end, it doesn't matter, okay? Luke 19:10, all right? This is where passionate disciple making really needs to begin, is do I have the same heart that Jesus has? The Son of Man has come to seek and to save the lost. I would say that we have to erase the picture that we have of who is lost. Like we have a demographic of somebody in our hearts that we would say, that's the person that's lost. They look like this, they act like this, they talk like this, and that's what lost is. And I would say I think we have to look a little harder. I would say I think we have to be more discerning with Jesus' word. I would say we have to not be judgmental about it, but we have to realize, what is Jesus expecting here? Who's come and seek and save the lost. Think of the people Jesus reached. Think about it. Were they all like just horrific murderers, rapists, drunkards, swindlers, people that you would not want to be around because they were so violent? Were just those the people Jesus went to? It's interesting, in Luke 10, he sends his guys out to proclaim the gospel to the lost sheep of Israel. How offensive is that? Well, not to us at all, because we're not Jews. It doesn't offend me in any way. We're going, go on, Jesus. Tell those Jews. They don't know. They don't know about you, Jesus. You need to get in there and come. Like that's us when we're not Jews, right? But it would be the equivalent of Jesus going, man, I'm going to send my people into the Christian churches. Boy, you want to talk about a riot. You want to talk about a riot, man, you know? And again, let me reset. Hopefully you edit the movie in your mind, okay? Edit the movie in your mind, because here's what the tendency is going to be to do, is to think, yeah, you know what, that mission field, for real, in Christian churches today, except mine here and the one I grew up in. Those are exempt. The only Christians in that building. I doubt it. You're crazy to think that. But no, you don't know. You don't know Mr. Phil, man. He's been in the church for 35 years. Don't talk about Mr. Phil that way. I don't even know who Mr. Phil is. I'm just saying, if Jesus isn't Lord, we got to proclaim the gospel. I don't care where you're sitting on Sunday morning. If it's just about convenience and prosperity, we have to proclaim the gospel. It doesn't matter where you're sitting Sunday morning. But he wears a suit and tie every Sunday to church. How are you going to say he's not okay with Jesus? You're up there preaching in denim. Who are you? Disrespecting the Lord like that, right? I mean, we got to edit the movie that's in our mind on, okay, who's lost? Well, it's definitely not this group. It's definitely not this group. I'm saying, listen, erase it and just look at it through the lens of Jesus. All right? Just look at it through that lens of lordship, of gospel, of discipleship. Okay? The Son of Man has come to seek. That's his call. He said that God sent me down there to help them. All right? Now the question is, do me and you, do we have that same heart? Of like, I'm thinking, I wake up in the morning, if you were to give me a quiz, Keith, tell me the top 10 people in Clemson that aren't disciples. Just send me out there and show me the people. Okay? I mean, my job isn't to make a list of who isn't. My job is to be a servant of Jesus, and he sends me out into the community to talk, to share the gospel, to listen, to love. right? Because that's his heart, okay? And so I just want to ask you that. Is that your heart in the morning when we get up and we're getting ready to go? Are we thinking, man, my household might be full of non-disciples? My job, my classroom, and not because of what you see, but because you know the gospel isn't being absorbed. It's not being lived out. Okay? Whoops, didn't want to go past that. 1 Timothy 1. This saying is trustworthy and I love that Paul writes it that way. This saying is trustworthy and deserving of full acceptance. Like, don't think about not accepting this. Don't think any other thing. Christ Jesus came into the world to save sinners. It's a rescue. It's a rescue. Right? But you know what's crazy is rescue doesn't really matter if there's no one you don't think you need to be rescued.
Right.
You know, you got the helicopter coming down and lowering the life raft. You're like, what are you doing? I'm fine. I always stand on my roof while the flood is coming through. And you don't need to help me, okay? But it's this idea of this can't just be informative, though. If this is the Jesus who we love with all of our heart, okay, we can't just say, yeah, he loves sinners, but I don't know any, I'm not around any, I don't talk to any, I don't help any. He'll just magically zap them. That didn't happen to you, and it didn't happen to me. Right?
Right.
That didn't happen that way. It wasn't one of those things where you just woke up and got, oh my goodness, everything is... No. Boy, it was people on a mission. It was people who loved Jesus. The Jesus who loves sinners. The Jesus who loves the lost. Saying, man, I love that. I love Jesus. And we've got a message, this good news, that honestly, it just breaks my heart to see people who do go to church. It just... The life, the words that come out of their mouths are anything but good news. It makes me so sad. You know, it's so sad when I look on Facebook and I'm like, why are Christians writing this stuff? It sounds like there's no good news. Right? It sounds like we're just like the world when we write stuff. Like it's so horrible out there. I'm like, you know what? The world isn't a great place, for sure. But how will anyone know that there's anything different unless what comes out of our mouth is different? I mean, what comes out of our mouth is attacking and cynicism and faithlessness and anger and bitterness and all that kind of stuff. How do we really think the rest of the world is going to go? You know what? That's where the gospel's preached.
Right.
You know, and again, it's not the fake, everything's great. Everything's puppies and sunshine. Everything's awesome. Right? It's that idea in the face of all of this mess that we see, it's still being faithful to Jesus as Lord. In the face of that, in the face of rotten circumstances, in the face of hatred, in the face of prejudice, in the face of all that kind of stuff, is a people that God has called out that navigate those waters the way Jesus did and love even when others aren't loving. Okay? That's what passionate disciple making is about, because that's how Jesus did it, okay? There wasn't a plan B. There was a plan A. Jesus was going to come down and die and rise again, and the local church was going to be the plan. There isn't plan B. There's not like, well, if that doesn't work, if that doesn't work, we're going to do something else, okay? There isn't another plan, okay? This is really the heart of Jesus. John 13, boy, I hope we don't ever have to write this verse up. I hope this is so written on our hearts that regardless of anything else, I give you a new command. This is Jesus. Just as I have loved you. You should think about that. You should think about that a lot. There isn't anything that helps me like get out of something in my head like thinking just as Jesus has loved me. I love that. Wow, listen, I can't even count the ways that Jesus has been merciful and graceful and truthful, sometimes painfully truthful. Right? There are times when, man, the word is like cutting. But thank God that happened. Right? But he said, you must also love others that same way. Okay? So if you want to be a disciple disciple maker, and I don't think there's any way around it if you want to follow Jesus. You can't do it without John 13, 34, and 35. Okay? It's not this function of business. He says, but here's the deal. By this, all people will know you're my disciples. By this, all people will know. All people will know. They might not say anything good about you, but all people will know. Why? Because it's a community of people that shouldn't be together. It's a community of people that shouldn't be together. It's when people walk by a tailgate party and see a bunch of people that shouldn't be together, loving just a time together. All right? That's odd. Okay? It's a group of people, and Jesus said this is the point of all this. It has to be community-based. Why do a dumb tailgate party on a Saturday morning? I mean, some of y'all like football, and you tailgate anyway. Some of y'all hate football. You don't like football. You don't want to go and eat really great food, outside. You don't want to do those things, okay? But here's the deal. What if I knew, man, there's an opportunity that God could use me and my community to help him in his own mission? Like the fact that I'm there. The fact that I may run into somebody. I mean, I can't even tell you. I could probably spend hours talking about just my first few interactions with the community of faith. I was in Thomasville, Georgia, just outside of Tallahassee, Florida. I can't tell you where I was there, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I've never met that guy before, but he said something to me that made such a profound impact. I mean, the first interaction I ever had was a Memorial Day picnic that I tried my best to not go to. I was going to know one person in the whole thing. It was the guy throwing the party. He's like, hey, come on over. And I'm like, okay, first of all, I don't get that many days off. I don't really want to go to, this Christian cookout, right? And then not only that, my buddy was going to come with me. And like right beforehand, he's like, I'm not coming. I'm like, sweet, I'm not either. And then I was just like, no, I got to go. What if they weren't welcoming that way? Because listen, I was still looking for the door. I'm like, what time are we getting at? Like all of that. And it was the love of people in a community that I was like, there's something else here. That's the plan of Jesus, okay? That's got to be our heart. That can't be an edict, okay? That can't be one of those things where you go, okay, it's read from up front that this is what has to happen. It's this idea of going, hold on a minute. Jesus' plan was communities of believers coming together and loving one another when they really have no reason to love one another, that all have different likes and dislikes. I mean, we let Rich into church. He's a Miami fan. I mean, listen, there's Clemson, Gamecocks, all that like here. I mean, I don't even know where Miami is anymore. That's my Florida State. Right? Stop it. You stop it. You better be happy Jesus makes me love you, Rich. If it wasn't for Jesus, I would hate Rich. Okay? But the thing about it is that idea of what Josh's talking about is there are so many things we get so wrapped up in that don't mean nothing in this world. Like you could like different music, you could like different styles, you could like, someone likes poetry, someone likes architecture, someone likes this, someone's a Gamecock fan, someone's a Miami fan, and it's like, you know what, that junk doesn't matter. And that's exactly how it's supposed to be. It's exactly how it's supposed to be. Is that it doesn't matter because when we love one another, when it's not convenient. Because listen, there's lots of groups that love one another because they are the exact same. Completely homogenous. Right? Have same beliefs, same way you look, same way you think, the same. No. The church is not meant to be that way. But it takes us individually to go, listen, I'm buying into what Jesus is selling. I'm buying into that, and I want to be a passionate disciple maker. Acts 2:46, every day. Here's what I like most about Acts 2. This was the first time anybody who were Christians did anything. Right? No one was a Christian before Pentecost. This was the first time, okay? So you got to think about it. What if you had no idea what Christianity was? You had no idea what a church building was. You had no idea of communion. You had no idea of a Bible study. You had no reference of it anyway. And then you decided that you were going to be part of this 3,000, let's say. It was like what Peter's saying in Acts chapter 2. What do we need to do? Repent and be baptized, every one of you. And we're like, I'm down with that. Boom! 3,000 people. And then what I like about this is this is what they thought Christianity should be. Like there was no books. They couldn't go to Lifeway and go, can I get some church history books? Are there Christian history books out there so we can know what to do? They're like, here's what we think you should do based on the teachings of Jesus and the apostles. Just above that, they talk about being devoted to the apostles' teaching, the fellowship, the breaking of bread, and the prayer. And it says every day they devoted themselves to meeting together in the temple complex. They said, you know what? It just makes sense to be around one another. It just makes sense. Like that's, you know, did that mean like 24/7, like you make a wall around a community, you keep it? No. They're like the temple complex, the campus, Starbucks, coffee shop, whatever, Elkmont Trading, whatever it is that you want to go. It's that idea of, man, you know, every day I've got to see somebody that we're together. Like, I got to have some, remember, they didn't text. All right? The temple complex, though, was the social place, right? It's kind of like you go to Starbucks, you know, and it's like it's a big social place. It's where people go to hang out. All-in coffee shop. Foothills. Dothan. Donut. On purpose. But yeah, Dothan Hills, like the little hub that they have there. There are these temple complexes, and to the early disciples, they were like, you know what, I gotta find my way in there, because man, I wanna be with my people. Okay, and they ate with bitter and cynical hearts. They like God on Sunday. No. Can you believe them? It's like, wow, what was really awesome, and the Lord added their number daily, those who are being saved. The thing that was awesome about that is that what did people see? People eat together, joyfully. It doesn't mean you have to have a whole meal. It might just be a cup of coffee. It might be a cinnamon roll from All-In Coffee Shop. It might be, you know, that's God's food right there. That is like manna in Clemson right there. But I'm just saying, it's this idea of it has nothing to do with even the meal. It has to do with the attitude. It's this idea, you know what, if I weren't here with you in this mission, I wouldn't probably even hang out with you. I mean, that's really true. We got our things, you know. But they were together with joyful and humble attitudes. That's a tough one right there. Huh? Humble attitudes. That doesn't mean you get together and you're like, look how awesome we are. Boy, everybody should want to be just like me because I'm so awesome. No. Don't talk to anybody that's not us. Because we're awesome. Like, we're a mess. We're a mess. And listen, if you're a mess too, come on and pull up a chair. Okay? Because we'll enjoy one another as we follow Jesus. Okay? It's this point. But here's the thing is who hears it? Turn over to Luke chapter 6. Luke chapter 6. Who hears this? Okay? Because this is the thing is oftentimes we veer away from being disciple makers because it's just discouraging. And you're like, who listens to this? Who's going to hear this? All right, it's amazing. In Jesus' time, his own people rejected him. Who hears the gospel? Luke chapter 6, verse 20. Jesus says, then looking up at his disciples, he said, you who are poor are blessed, because the kingdom of God is yours. You who are now hungry are blessed, because you'll be filled. You who now weep are blessed, because you'll laugh. You are blessed when people hate you, when they exclude you, insult you, and slander your name as evil because of the Son of Man. Rejoice in that day and leap for joy. Take note, your reward is great in heaven, for this is the way their ancestors used to treat the prophets. He's talking about like the God followers of the day. He's not talking about just random people. He says, no, that God, listen, they've killed all the prophets. A lot of people aren't going to like what you have to say. And he goes on, he says, but woe to you who are rich, for you have received your comfort. Woe to you who are now full, for you'll be hungry. Woe to you who are now laughing, for you'll mourn and weep. Woe to you when all people speak well of you. For this is the way their ancestors used to treat the false prophets. The false prophets. It's who everybody said the nice things about. Okay? Now, here's what I will say. If you're a jerk, that's not persecution when people don't like you. Please be very clear about that, okay? You're like, I'm so persecuted. No, you're a jerk. You're mean to people. You are judgmental. You are arrogant and unlikable. You're not being persecuted. You really aren't a good guy. I mean, you're a jerk. That's not persecution, okay? The persecution is Jesus going, no, man, when you're gospel-filled and you love your enemy and you serve and every part of you is humble, there's still going to be people going, you know what, that guy is, there's something wrong with that guy. I don't like that guy. Okay, that's just weird, okay? So I just want a little caveat there. Don't go and get all proud of yourself if somebody doesn't like you just because you were mean to them, okay? So just very clear. But who hears this? You know who's going to hear the gospel? The poor. And I don't mean financially poor, although sometimes that's the case. All right, sometimes you are in a financial situation that kind of brings you to rock bottom, and you're willing to hear things, okay? But this can't just be financial. There's no way Jesus is saying this to just, if you're poor, you're going to go to heaven if you're rich or not. Okay, that's not his point here. But if you're poor in spirit, the poor will hear this message because you don't think you've got it all on straight. You've got it all handled. All you need is you. Everything. The poor are going to hear the hungry. Like in our world today, just being very satisfied. Like we don't have to worry about where we're going to eat. It's just like everything's very comfortable. In fact, isn't it easy to get a little bit perturbed when it's not comfortable? I can't believe those seats in McDonald's when I go in there. They're so uncomfortable. Gosh, I can't believe that. Or let's go a step further. I can't believe those seats in church. They're so uncomfortable. Oh my goodness. I can't believe I have to be there with people that I love and hear the Word of God and sit on these seats. They're so uncomfortable. All right? Man, I'm afraid you're not going to hear the gospel ever. You just aren't because you're not hungry for it. You haven't hit kind of rock bottom. You haven't kind of figured this out yet. The hurting people will hear this. Right? He said, man, they're going to do just laugh, and life is all good all the time. And it's all, don't even think about all that bad stuff. You know what, man? You look around the world, it hurts. Look at our families and our friends. There are a lot of hurting situations, and just turning a blind eye doesn't make them better. To engage them hurts sometimes. To go into that world hurts. And to know that, man, we have to navigate into relationships that are just painful. But how much more will we hear the gospel? Oh, man, I can't do this on my own. I've got to do it Jesus' way. I don't have the strength to go into hurting places. Right? Hurting people hear the gospel. Okay? Unsatisfied people. When you're honest with yourself. And you know what? I'm not satisfied with my life as a Christian. Like, I'm ready to get rid of all the stuff I thought it took to become a Christian and all the stuff I thought it took to live as a Christian. And I just want Jesus' straight up word. Okay? We've got to get the ball rolling, right? Hardest part. You've got to start somewhere, okay? Because this is overwhelming to go, oh, now what do I do? Oh, gosh, now I've got to go out there. Listen, we're going to be digging into some things on Wednesday night, some very practical things about this, okay? But there has to be, like, the ball has to start rolling, okay? First of all, we do need to embody these 4 principles. Not as a plan and not as a slogan. But this idea of the gospel has to be so rich in my life. I have to truly live in a way that's unconditional to Jesus. I've got to be all in to my community. And I want to share this mission of Jesus, okay? It's truly embodying that as a starting point, okay? And it may start immediately here, okay? Daily community contact, okay? There's no easy, we have the easiest of any civilization that ever walked the planet to be in contact with one another on a daily basis. There's never been an easier time. Like, there literally is no excuse to say, man, I went through my whole day today and had no interaction with a disciple. No interaction with somebody in my community. Okay? And let me make it even more specific than that, because, again, I can do this and go, yeah, but you know, Joe Blow that lives over across town, he's a disciple, and I talk to him every day. What does he know about you? Not a whole lot. But I like him because he doesn't know me and I don't know him. And that's an easy place to be, isn't it? Yeah. I'm talking about in your community, in your small group, is this daily contact of some sort, okay? And if you're thinking in your mind, okay, well, that's just one more thing I have to do, okay? Go all the way back to the gospel. If you're thinking that's one more thing I have to do, you've missed it all. You've missed the entirety of the gospel, okay? Rather than go, hold on a minute, Jesus' plan A is his community, loving one another and making disciples. Every single day. We can pick up the phone. We can text. We can go and just talk for 15 minutes. We can cross paths. And it happens a lot. That's what I love. I see that happening a lot. And I love that. We've got to do it more. Okay? And then here's the big one is at the heart of just pulling up a chair. The heart of pulling up a chair, okay? It's not, hey, there's not enough room at this table for you. No, come here. Let me pull up a chair. You come and sit with us. No. We're talking about things you can't hear. No. Let me pull up a chair. You're welcome here. You know, I'm not going to make you sit at the center table and take a test before you're welcome here. Now, stand over there. Okay, it's the Starbucks table over there. You take the test over there, and then we'll see if we're going to pull a chair up over here. The community has to be, come and sit with us. Come over here. Okay, that's the big thing. I want to ask you that. How often has that happened just in the last week? You've offered like table time to somebody. Maybe it's in your home, maybe it's at work, maybe it is at work and you're going, hey, can we just have lunch together? Can we just talk? Can we just get to know one another? Or maybe it's more than that. Maybe there's somebody at your office or in school that's like, I want to learn the Bible. Okay, that's great. I'm busy though. Maybe one day we'll get there. Instead of going, hold on, let me pull up a chair for you and dig into this, okay? Because here's my view is, if we're going weeks, even a week, but weeks at a time, and you're thinking, I'm not pulled up a chair for anybody. It hadn't been at Sunday morning, it hadn't been at Wednesday night, it hadn't been in my free time, it hadn't been at work, it hadn't been at school, it hadn't been at cross-training. I just don't pull up a chair to bring anyone in. I would say, wow, we've got to change that. Okay, if we're going to be the community of Jesus time. Okay. We're going to leave it at that. Wednesday, we're going to dig into some practicality of this, okay? Don't be overwhelmed. Don't feel like, oh, there's so much, I'm failing. Okay, no. This is the journey with Jesus. All right? It's not pass or fail right now. This is transformation. All right? Let's go to God in prayer. Father, thank you. Thanks again. I feel like we should just pray that all the time. God, just thank you for everything. God, in fact, it's one of those funny verses you put in the Bible to give thanks in all circumstances. That seems strange to our ears, God, as there seems to be some